Oh my gosh, I hate phones. I hate technology. Oh my God. I was 10 minutes into a video again and my phone stopped it. I swear there's a ghost in here who just thinks that's funny and wants to press the button. Must not be a harmful ghost, but he has a sense of humor, or she. There is no reason. I am literally not touching the phone. It is not because it died. It just stops recording. Okay, so anyways, we're here. So I have a list of topics that I plan to get to eventually, and originally I was going to stay with like buying and selling and then work my way into other stuff, but I realized I have to go with what I'm inspired about. And somebody actually reached out and requested this topic, and it was perfect because I already had that on my list and it gave me just the amount of motivation I needed to go into it. If you notice, I don't even have notes today because I am so passionate about this topic. Beware, this might be 30 minutes long. I'm sorry, but I'm passionate about this one, so we're just gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about draw reins, spurs, bits, tools in general. And we're gonna touch on like some contact stuff too, but tools. So I want to start off by saying that tools are a beautiful thing. I mean, technology is amazing, tools are amazing, you know, draw reins and Pessoa rigs and different types of spurs and different types of bits. They're all amazing resources that we have. My rule of thumb has always been know how to use and not abuse. But then again, if you don't know to what point is then abusing that tool or your horse, then this rule doesn't even apply to you because you wouldn't know different. So we're going to go into that. And this is one of those things where I sit and think how funny it is when somebody disagrees with me, because I feel like I have the most open-minded, right in the middle kind of opinion about things. I don't even really tend to have an opinion. I just, these are my thoughts on it. And I'm always open to hear somebody else's thoughts. And if you can explain to me logically why you feel that way, then I'm open. I'm willing to try anything, because what horses have taught me is truly every situation is different. People tend to be very stereotypical and they fit within certain boxes. Some horses do, but a lot of the times they have the strangest quirks and weird things have worked for different horses. So again, when somebody gets bitchy with me, I'm like, you have to, there go the leg taps. You have to be super shallow minded or one track minded, because I'm open. Anyway, so these are my thoughts on tools. Draw reins. Draw reins are a beautiful thing. I love draw reins. I've had the trainer that absolutely despises draw reins. I've had the trainer that's all they use. And then I've had the trainer who's right in the middle. And that trainer was the one who really gave me my view on a lot of things, or helped me kind of mold those thoughts, because I was younger and still learning. And I'm really glad, because again, being open-minded makes a big difference, especially when you're working with baby horses. And we're going to touch on that. So draw reins. Draw reins are fantastic, like I've said 10,000 times already, but when used properly, because when not used properly, they make me make that emoji face. It's like, I don't even know if I could make that face, but just, ugh, disgusting. I can't. And you know how I feel, as I've said in my other videos, about getting videos of just all in draw reins 24/7. That's not a good thing. I don't want to see that. And also then when you see people that are using the draw reins and letting the horses stretch down low, and they don't have a martingale on to tuck the draw reins into, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that horse is going to put a foot through those draw reins, and that just gives me huge anxiety. So most of the time I feel like when I see people using draw reins, they have them so tight to the point that they like have the end of the draw reins knotted up so that there's not too much excess. And unless you have a really short-necked horse where your draw reins are just super long, because there are those pairs that are just super long, because, you know, for bigger horses and whatnot, you shouldn't have that much excess that you need to tie it up. And I've used it before, like I said, certain situations. But, and I'm not saying I haven't gotten on the occasional horse or two that just, they needed a strong discussion and those draw reins got tightened up all the way just to basically stop hanging on me, or to make your point and then let go. I'm not saying, we've all been there. We've all had those moments. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I just always ride with my draw reins, you know, nice and even and soft and loose. That's not the point of draw reins. But, you know, for me, how I feel draw reins are supposed to be used is to teach them. I feel like there should never be that tight that they're like this. And I feel like draw reins are also good because then they have something that they kind of hit when they go to come up. Rather than hitting your hand, they kind of catch the draw rein. And it teaches them not to want to come up, if that makes sense. And I don't even want to dig into that. So I feel like if you get it, you get it. But most of the times when I see people using draw reins, they're so tight. That horse is like all the way tucked into itself. And at that point, you're not achieving anything. The horse is not using its back properly. There is no bend. There's no softening. 9 times out of 10, their mouth locks and you're building muscle incorrectly. You are building, yeah, you're going to build a cresty neck, of course, because, I mean, put your own neck in that position. That's killing them right here. And then their pole gets set off and then they're in pain and then it becomes a whole issue. But most of the times, those horses, when you take the draw reins off of them, they don't know how to carry themselves, or they end up going super up in front of you because they're just like, oh, thank God, somebody finally let go. But they'll have them all crimped up and most of the time not moving forward into the bridle. When I'm using draw reins, I'm working it on both directions. I'm using it as a little bit of help, not because you don't need to be stronger to get a horse to get into the bridle, but sometimes you need something that's just gonna help give you some stretchiness. And draw reins, like I said, I love draw reins when used properly. But I always see them traveling backwards in a ball. And the best way that I try to explain that to people who are using draw reins or are new to draw reins is that you can't hit the gas and the brakes at the same time. I mean, that even goes for without using draw reins with people that are way too handsy. But especially with the draw reins, because now you have a lot more control. And like I said, most of the time their mouths are just locked anyways. But they get so confused because what do you want? And then don't even get me started on people jumping with draw reins. I'm not saying it's not a good tool, but when I see it used, most of the time it's being used improperly and they're not releasing properly. When you ride with draw reins, you jump with draw reins, you need to be that much better about your release because they're gonna catch them on the backside and then you've achieved nothing. And keeping that horse down like this all the way to the fence, they can't see where they're leaving the ground from. And that's not what you want because then they're not using their front end properly. They're on their front end. They can't get rocking. They can't rock back onto their hind end to properly leave the ground. You're not creating that round jump that you want where they come up into you. So that I can't stand to see. But again, draw reins are a wonderful tool when used properly. And I hate seeing them on young horses, especially when they're being used consistently on young horses. And this goes for contact too. Like, what are you trying to do to a 3-year-old who is not even fully formed yet? Like, all their bones aren't done. They're not finished growing. Their joints aren't closed. And then you're trying to basically mold them into something all the time. And again, not using their back properly. And some people do. Some people use draw reins beautifully, and I love to see that. But at that point, like, why are we teaching these young horses contact, 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 contact? Like, let go of their face, let them travel naturally, let them learn to go forward, let them learn what your aids are, let them learn to use themselves, and then you can start to apply that. Most of the time, a lot of horses will give you contact naturally if you ride from your leg, push that hind end forward, and then let them come into your hands. I've never had to really teach one contact. They have come around on their own and in their right time, and it's not forced to them. And then they have anxiety about contact. I can't tell you how many I've gotten out of anxiety about contact. So for me, I ride them on the buckle and I let them be themselves. And so they'll have anxiety about somebody touching their mouth, or they lock all the time. You'll go to turn right and they completely lock and shove their body the other direction, and all anxiety. And most of the time I'm like, yep, somebody drilled this horse on contact, 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 contact. I can't stand it. That just makes me want to puke when I see that. So that's how I feel about draw reins. I mean, ponies and kids' horses and young horses, it's just draw reins, draw reins, draw reins. And neck stretchers. Oh my gosh, with the neck stretchers. I'm not saying that, okay, my chair's making funny sounds. I'm not saying that neck stretchers are bad. Again, depends on the situation for everything. But I'm seeing them improperly used all the time. These horses' heads are just tied down. And again, a little bit of contact, a little bit of feel from that neck stretcher or draw rein, but they have them tied down. They're, again, on their front end, not properly using their hind end. And most of the time, those are used for like kids or younger riders or amateurs. And those kinds of tools are meant to be used, which anyways, a more advanced rider isn't probably going to use them. But if they do, because there are situations, they're going to be using the proper aids to be assisting that tool. It's not a tool to just put on and then leave them alone. It doesn't work like that. I would never in my right mind give an amateur draw reins or really a neck stretcher, because that terrifies me. And what if that horse reacts and then pops up at it and then ends up flipping over? Because those things happen. I think, I had a pony that was really bad about always dropping down. So then we had the piece that held her up. And no, I didn't like it because it made her travel, kind of inverted at that point, and she built a really strange top line, but she was so bad about dropping her head because she knew she could get anybody off the front of her. So yeah, you got to do what you got to do sometimes, but I just hate seeing these tools improperly used. And that goes to show that the trainer never properly taught them, because that trainer probably uses them that way too. So that's my feel for draw reins. Then you move on to spurs. That's another one. It's hard because some horses are just so dead quiet. My client's horse, Maytal's horse, is really quiet to her leg. And she has a weaker leg. Like, we talk about this all the time. She has a weaker leg. And so the easy thing would be to give her spurs so she could get him to go forward. But for me, you need to get stronger with your leg. Now, I'm not going to have her sit there and just be body slamming him the whole time trying to get him to go, because then you're just defeating the purpose and you're making him even more dull to the leg. So she carries a crop and she knows how to use the crop one good time. We're working on that because her taps literally wouldn't even kill a mosquito. But a one good smack behind your leg and then go forward if you've been asking and he's not giving it to you, because then also you're going to ruin the training that you're asking for it, he's not giving it, and then that goes backwards. But I'm not going to have someone who has a weak leg that doesn't really hold it completely still yet wear a spur. That's just what? So we make everybody else's life easier? No, we're not doing that. And I see that happen way too often. I see people give amateurs and kids spurs and they're just nailing them in the sides with the spurs. And I'm thinking, you need to get your leg stronger. And if that means you don't get to jump for a few months until your leg gets stronger and you can put leg on and get that horse to go forward, then you don't jump for a little while. And that is a whole nother topic I'm going to talk about one day, with trainers cheating and letting these kids move faster than they need to be because the parents want to push for it. And that's why I stopped teaching, for that reason exactly. I loved the kids, but the parents, they pushed that you couldn't even train them properly because the things you wanted to do, they just want to see them jumping and showing. And I get it. They're spending a lot of money, but then you're building zero foundation. But so where I was with spurs, and then they just give them longer spurs and sharper spurs. And then on the other hand, you see professionals that are using them and horses come out of the ring and have absolutely rubbed raw sides. I just, for the life of me, I can't understand that, and I get some horses are just super dead to the leg, but then for me, take it back a step, and not all things can be fixed. Some horses are just the way they are and it's not fixable, but take it back a step, try to see where the miscommunication's happening, that your horse has bloody sides. And I've seen it with good professional riders on nice horses, but something's wrong there. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't take a step back. They just keep pushing and pushing. Take a step back and see what's going on here. Evaluate why your horse will not go off of your leg. So that always just makes me absolutely sick to my stomach to see that. And again, trying to make somebody's life easier, not happening here. And crops. On that same note, crops. I hate seeing crops improperly used. I hate seeing all tools improperly used. So there's going to be just a lot of hate going on in this video. But, something that with my client right now, what we're working on is not overusing the crop, right? Knowing when to use it effectively and how to follow through when you're using that crop. So if you have asked, my rule of thumb is if you have asked 2 times already, clearly, now be honest with yourself, have you asked clearly? Have you asked clearly and they are still, excuse me, not giving what you asked for? And I always am teaching to take a look at yourself and make sure you went through all the proper steps and it's not you that's miscommunicating. Then yes, apply that crop, sure. So typically it would be 2 squeezes, then a kick, and if nothing from there, then it's going to be a crop. But don't be an annoying little fly with it. I hate seeing the little taps on the shoulder. You know how obnoxious that is? I see that all the time. I'm like, one good one behind the leg and move on. But then the thing that I don't see trainers teaching is that when your kid goes to smack, and this is why for me, when I teach lessons, we work on these basics. My lessons are very outside of the box. We are working on literally learning how to properly use our crop. And sometimes that will take up half a lesson because I see them whack and I see them then catch them in the mouth, because then the horse, you know, you have to be prepared if you're going to smack them that they're going to have a reaction if they're not already dull to the crop too. So you have to have your hands softer. Obviously be prepared if they were to then like take off or something. But that little jolt forward that is a natural reaction, you catch them in the mouth. Literally, what did you just do at that point? That was so confusing. That was, again, the gas and the brakes at the same time. So those are things that need to be taught. I mean, I don't know why these basics and foundation are not being taught. It's small stuff like that that makes a difference. And then that they can't understand why I smack him all the time and he doesn't go forward, because you catch him in the mouth every time and then he doesn't know what to do. But then also how to follow through after that. So then say you smacked him and, you know, reinforce the aid of your leg and you didn't catch him in the mouth. Now going forward from there, you need to ride assertively. Something has to follow up. You can't just smack and go back to riding the same way you were. I mean, at that point, again, what did you achieve? Nothing. So these are things that need to get taught. Draw reins, spurs, neck stretchers, which... So then that brings me to my final point, which we might be doing good and not having a 30-minute video today. My final point is bits. Bit changes. It goes on the same topic with the rest of them. Everybody changing bits to make their life easier instead of going back to the basics. Most horses are not heavy. Most horses will give and be soft. And if you have a horse that travels, you know, a little bit higher and up in front of you, those are all things that can be worked on through foundation and proper flat work, which apparently half the world doesn't know what proper flat work is. And believe me, we can tell who knows how to do proper flat work and who doesn't, and who spends the time on it. And I love seeing a Pessoa rig used. I want to put that in there. That was random, but I love to see a Pessoa rig used. I think that groundwork, literally, not even the flat work, getting on the ground, doing the groundwork with your horse is such a wonderful tool. I love the Pessoa rig. I think that it helps for riders that either don't know how to teach that yet, and it's such great if you can't ride that day, or just training in general, and a plain snaffle. So when you're watching your horse go around in that Pessoa rig with a plain snaffle, and then I see you riding it in this giant pelham, or God knows what you have in their mouth, how does that make sense? Doesn't that tell you at that point that it's rider error? So I see people moving around with bits and just jumping to whatever makes their life easiest. And for me, I don't make changes with bits that quickly. I'm always going to give it my best shot of figuring that horse out, what their thing is before making that jump. And some horses, yeah, I've had some that ride like an absolute train. Like, holy shit. Excuse me, but you can't steer, you can't anything. You get on and you're just, Jesus, take the wheel, because you are going to have no control from the moment you sit on them. Anytime you put leg on, you are getting a response that you did not ask for. So yeah, there are those horses, but out of all the horses I have ever have come through my barn that I've ever owned, I've only had 2 like that. And they were very special cases. One never changed. One changed eventually with a lot of work. And then we ended up actually finding out there was an issue, and I actually spoke about it in my one post about the whole barefoot thing and whatever, that she ended up having a lot of cheek meat, and the bit would pinch her mouth. So they had her in a double bridle when I bought her, and she rode like a train. And then by the end, I was showing her in a hackamore. And actually our hackamore broke in front of jump 3 at a show. We were showing in the meter 25, and that's terrifying. You're coming to an oxer and it breaks. I literally have it on video. And she came to a complete stop. I put my hands up around her neck when it broke because I felt the tension release, and she stopped. And who would have thought? That mare was such a hothead when I got her, being ridden in a double bridle. She had no steering. Like, you didn't have any bend whatsoever. It was just like this. The whole body would move. And by the end, I mean, but it was relationship. It was flat work and relationship and patience. And I feel like a lot of people lack on all of those things. And so also with bits, you have to put a little bit of effort and time into being creative. You have to think of why we have so many different types of bits. I'm not even talking about getting into the rougher stuff. I'm talking about plain snaffles. There are so many different shapes and such because horses have different tongue shapes. Some have fat tongues, skinny tongues. Some have extra cheek meat. Some, their teeth. You have to have conversations with your dentist. I mean, for me, when I get a new horse, they get their teeth done immediately. I don't care if they said they just got their teeth done. My dentist is coming out and taking a look because I've had people say, oh, he just got his teeth done. And I'm like, what did he even do? Like, my dentist comes out and goes, I don't even know what got done here. But a bit seat is so important. Oh my gosh, the change. I will have a horse come in and be tossing its head and going crazy and foaming at the mouth, and then they get the bit seat corrected, or however you want to say that, by the dentist, and world of difference, going in a snaffle, poking their nose out on the buckle. So teeth are huge. It's like no hoof, no horse, no bad teeth, bad horse. That's, yeah. So a dentist is everything as well. But you can't just throw whatever works, like throw whatever is on work, like whatever works just in their mouth. And on a different note, there's no such thing as a rough bit. There are rough hands, but still people just get so extra without taking the time and, again, going back to basics and looking into the teeth and the shape of their mouth. And I know that's a little bit more advanced, but your trainer should also be putting the work in. Some can just go in a snaffle and they're regular and they move on and that's that. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't still be checking these things and making sure that they're comfortable, because some of them don't say anything. They're uncomfortable, but they just don't say anything. And then some are the biggest dramatic babies there ever were. So with bits, you know, and I'm not offended by pellums and things like that. I just hate seeing people overbit. If you have a horse, like I've seen kids riding horses that are a little bit more forward and they just bit them up like crazy instead of because they can't hold them together. Well, one, why is that kid riding that horse? Two, they're not even releasing properly. They're catching them on the backside. With a bit like that, catching them on the backside, that is 10 times worse. How about teach them to sit up? How about bring it down to basics and build a relationship and communication between them? And with a hot horse, sometimes it doesn't matter how much communication you have, they're still going to have their moments because they are just the way they are. But I just see it so often. I see these horses with crazy bits in their mouth. Like, I mean, like freaking chainsaw. Like, I'm not kidding. I've seen some of this stuff and I just can't understand it. And then the rips that they get on the sides of their mouth. But all of that most of the time can come down to flat work unless there's a very specific situation. And like I said, I've had them before, but there was 3 of them and one never changed, and the other 2, one changed through flat work and she softened up, and then one we ended up figuring out the cheek part. And some horses, a lot of my personal jumpers had bits that they went in at home and bits that they went in at the show. Because when we get to the show, we don't have days and days and days to work on that. You go to the show, you know that some horses get a little bit more up or a little stronger. So yeah, you're going to bit up a little bit. But it comes down to the hands. And I am never going to give uneducated hands anything more than a snaffle. But then on the other hand, what I hate seeing is the people who are snaffle and snaffle only. So again, I'm very open-minded and very much on that situation. It comes down to there's so many parts to the equation. The horse, the surroundings, the education of both horse and rider, the rider's issues, and So some people are super soft-handed and a snaffle won't work for them because they're just too soft in the hand. So yeah, you might have to give them something a little extra. For me, my step up is a 2-ring, which I don't think is a very big step up. That's kind of my second in the book. And then I forget completely what I was about to say. Where was I going with that? I'm going to take a second because where was I going with that? Ah, yes. The people who stick with just snaffle, 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 snaffle. Okay. And then so when you have a horse that is heavier or doesn't get in the bridle, or, and again, not forcing getting in the bridle, but if you have a horse that doesn't bend or gets more forward and they are just convinced sticking with a snaffle is the right way to go. If you're going to be in their face the whole entire time, there was no point of having a snaffle. At that point, ride with something a little bit stronger so that when you do take, they listen and you can release. So it depends on the situation, but you know, the whole point of this is that I feel like there is so much education that's lacking in our community. And I just wish that there were either courses that were taught about this, and to finalize that, isn't it crazy that you literally have to be certified to shampoo people's hair, but you don't have to be certified to train? There is certification, but you don't have to be certified. That to me is crazy. I mean, you don't have to be certified to have kids either, and there are some people who should not be having children. But that's crazy because these are the things that I would be working on, these basics. And you know, working with the baby horses has really educated me on that. You know, of course, we don't all start out with all this knowledge, but I have slowly worked on that, and I have had a huge bit collection at one point, and I try to get creative. And when a horse doesn't like a bit, if they go in a snaffle, right? I've had this. I've had a horse that I've tried in a snaffle and they're just not responding. That to me doesn't always mean bit up. I have gone, okay, was it a thicker mouthpiece? Was it a thinner mouthpiece? Was it rounded? Did it have the one little bobble in the middle? Because that can create a nutcracker effect. But then there are horses that don't like, what's that called? When it's like double jointed. Then there are some horses that don't like that. Then there's like, you know, the French link when it has or the dog bone in the middle. There are horses that don't like that. I mean, you'll say, you know, for me, I don't like anything that does the nutcracker like a normal snaffle, but then you have horses that's all they like. Some like the straight across piece. So it's not always about bidding up. It's about getting creative, taking the time, finding what works, and not just throwing tools at people and this horse just gets lost in translation, because that's what ends up happening. And you're not educated enough to be handed all of these tools. And that's just mortifying. And then there are plenty of riders that really do know what they're doing, and I love to see that. So yeah, that was my topic for today. And if anybody has any questions or anything that you would like to add, I would love to hear it. And yeah, so have a good night.